All right. So a couple days ago, I made a post on Facebook to where I wrote with my left hand, and that's the first time I've done that since I was about 8 years old. I guess to kind of give a little backstory why I felt it was unique is that when I lived in Texas right before I moved to Georgia, I broke my right hand pretty gnarly to where I was in a cast for a while. And that's right around the time, I guess I was like maybe 6 or 7. That's right around the time that they're teaching you how to write. And then it was shortly after that that we moved to Georgia. And then when on the travel to Georgia, I wind up cutting my left hand pretty gnarly. Okay, so just to back up, I'm getting off track here. When I broke my right hand, since they were teaching you how to write, they're just like, all right, well, this kid's going to be a lefty. And so they just started teaching me how to write left. And then to go back to my story, when we moved to Georgia, on the way there with the moving trucks going and everything, and we're driving our van, I ripped open my hand pretty bad. And so by the time I got there, I couldn't write with my left. I was sort of like, all right, well, I guess this kid's going to be a righty. And so I started writing with my right. And now the funny part about that is that like I said, I went back to writing with my right hand, and I stayed right my whole life. However, I think it was probably around when I was in the 3rd grade. So that was 2nd grade when we moved to Georgia. So around the 3rd grade, we lived in a little subdivision that was out in the middle of nowhere in the sticks of Georgia. And there was not a lot of stuff to do. And so I had to entertain myself somehow. So I obviously found ways. But I was not really a troublemaker, but, I did get in trouble in class. And you know how, the people my age, when you got in trouble, they would tell you, if you're talking in class, you're chewing gum, they would tell you that as a punishment that you would have to write, I will not talk in class, or I will not chew gum in class, 25 times, 50 times, 100 times as a punishment. And so I had to do that quite a few times because, like I said, I was a little chatty Cathy, and so I remember I'm sitting at home and I'm kind of bored and I'm trying to think of something to do, and I had a pencil and I was drawing, and so I stuck the pencil back in my left hand and was drawing with my left hand, and then I started to try and write with my left hand just to refamiliarize myself with it, and then epiphany struck, and I'm like, oh, I got an idea. I can write, I will not talk in class. I'll just go ahead and pre-write some, because I thought it was just an awesome idea at the time. And so I'm just like, I'm just going to do it with my left hand, for fun. So I started doing it with my left hand, and I will not talk in class. And I did that 25 times on a piece of paper. And then I started, I will not chew gum in class 25 times. And so then I was like, you know what? I wonder if I can write with my left and my right simultaneously. So I got 2 pencils and 2 pieces of paper, and I sat down there and I started to try and see if I could. Now, obviously, it was tough. And as long as I could kind of keep the line going, I could write with my right hand, no problem, but I had to look at my left more than my right. But I was kind of actually able to do it. It looked pathetic, but I was able to do it. And so I just sat there and I continued to write, 2 at a time. Next thing you know, I had like 100 of them. I will not talk in class. I had 100 of I will not chew gum in class, and so I wound up amassing quite a few of them. So, me, I just, I'm brilliant this way. I got a folder, I organized them, and then the next day at school, I was prepared. I brought some gum, and I came in the classroom. I can't remember the teacher's name. I think it was Miss Creech. That was the teacher's name, Miss Creech. From what I remember, she was a nice lady, and unfortunately, I guess I terrorized her a little bit. But so anyway, so I bring some gum, and next thing you know, I throw gum in my mouth, and I'm just smacking away trying to get her attention, and then I just start talking to everybody, trying to get her attention. And finally, I get her attention, and she, and I knew she loved telling people to write, I will not chew gum in class. And so anyways, she said, as punishment, I will, You have to write, I will not talk in class. You're chewing gum. I will not, chew gum in class. You're going to have to write that 50 times each. And of course, I was prepared. So I'm like, oh, okay. I grab my folder, pull my folder out. Look around, and here's 50 of those. There's 50 of those. There we go. We're good, right? And she just looked at me and was just like, oh, And she walked up and she looked at my folder and looked through it, and she just picked it up and walked up and threw it in the trash. And then she said, know what? You're going to come right up here in this front desk, and you're going to sit here, and you're going to write it right here in the middle of class. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I go up there, and I sit down, and so I forget what everybody else is doing, but obviously the teacher Miss Creech just sat down, and she was just watching me while whatever the kids were doing. And so I remember I pulled out 2 pieces of paper and 2 pencils, and I sat there and started writing. And then I noticed that she was looking at me, and the next thing I know, I just looked up at her while I was writing, and then just kind of like winked at her while I was writing. And she just like looked at me like I was some satanic little brat. And she just said, oh, you know what, Chris, just stop and just go back to your chair, okay? Just go back to your desk, all right? Just don't worry about it. And that was it. And, and I don't know, I can't remember if I got in trouble after that. But I thought that was a funny story, and I felt like I needed to share it. Why, when I made that post about me writing, and then I put in there, I don't think I have written with my left hand since I was 8 years old. The whole story behind how I broke my right hand, learned left, and then hurt my left hand, and then went back right. And then I thought the whole story about me trying to write 2 pages simultaneously, I just thought it was hysterical, and so I thought I would share it. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I don't really have any more things to add to that story. I think it's pretty hysterical on its own, and I'm going to let it ride. You guys take care.